Welcome to our presentation in the course Innovation and Value Creation Wheel. By applying this exact framework, we will take on the challenge of a young healthcare-related startup trying to secure B2B partnerships ahead of its launch. The team behind the scenes consists of Jason Briggs, Camila Segura, Marlo Frings, and Maria Pineda. Let's start with what Malaconnect is actually about. Malaconnect's mission is to enable easy access to quality care services for people in need and also their families. They hereby aim to link care seekers with professional healthcare providers through a secure, user-friendly platform and, really important, based on real-time capacities in order to simplify the search for support and broadening service availability by enhancing market transparency. Malaconnect envisions, therefore, a future where healthcare is within everyone's reach, anytime and also anywhere, aiming to be the premier digital bridge in healthcare, breaking down the barriers to accessible care with innovative technology. The goal, therefore, is to enable care providers to broaden their impact, making high quality and readily available care a reality for all. Now that we know what Malaconnect is generally about, let us dive into phase one of the value creation wheel, starting off with the diagnostic. Currently, Germany is facing three healthcare-related challenges: demographic change and an aging society, which means we have low birth rates, fast aging population, and a rise of chronic health conditions and long-term care needs, and also facing a shrinking working age population on the other hand. This accumulation faces problem number two, a decreasing amount of professionals, which means there's a greater demand in the sector but a shrinking youth, demanding working conditions, as we all know, higher salaries or better conditions in other countries as well. Thirdly, we are having a mismatch of the little available capacities that we actually have. This is due to a lack of general available information, unawareness of services available in the sector, and the absence of coordinating among healthcare suppliers. So it becomes very clear that an improved coordination of demand and supply is needed, as current alternatives are very static. People in need can phone their way through lists from the insurance, for example. They can also ask friends and family for recommendation over recommendation over recommendation. They can ultimately also conduct Google search and use various other channels. However, none of the currently available channels offer real-time capacities. With Malaconnect, on the other hand, people in need do not have to do more than just visit the website, enter the filter of a specific service category that they are looking for, as well as their postal code. And already they will be matched with geomapping, can view real-time capacities and contact the provider of their own choice.
Thank you, Marlo. So now I will continue to dig a little bit deeper to better understand the context for Malaconnect and, of course, LlamaCare. So looking into LlamaConnect, we conducted a 5C analysis, and we evaluated the company, the collaborators of the solution of Malaconnect, customers, competitors, and, of course, the German context. More specifically to the company, we see that the company is trying to tackle a societal issue for the country, as Marlo had already explained. The collaborators of the solution are, of course, the insurances, hospitals, and the different providers of healthcare services. In terms of market size for Germany, for the customers, they can actually tackle a very big size of market. We calculated the TAM, the SAM, and the SUM for the customer potential. And of course, we identified the biggest main competitors for the solution, keeping in mind that Malaconnect does not really have any direct competitors. We will tackle that later on, but that's something to mention quickly, that they only have traditional lead companies right now as potential competitors. And for the German context, of course, we evaluated the economic, social, technological, and legal environmental aspects. So to continue and take a deeper dive into the German context, the biggest takeaways of this analysis for us was that, of course, Germany is the third largest world economy in the world, which is very incredible, to be honest. Of course, we also looked at the aging population and the impact on productivity and the workforce availability. This is part of the societal issue that Marlo explained earlier, of course, and how the solution can help tackle this problem of population aging and, of course, lower birth rates. And then when it comes to technological, we also see that there's a big push in Germany for enhancing digitalization and move towards a more digital economy. And then the legal aspects back this up as well. There's legislative powers and push for legislation to make this happen and to have a more digital economy. And in terms of environment, of course, they care a lot about the environment and then reducing the global carbon neutrality and getting there. Moving on to the PESTEL analysis, we also evaluated the political, economic, social, technological, and legal and environmental aspects of the market as well. The most important takeaways here is that the existence of international conflicts puts more pressure in the healthcare system in Germany. So this makes the Malaconnect solution even more relevant. When it comes to the healthcare services in Germany as well, they have a very big economic importance for the GDP of the country. They generate more than 700 billion euros. And in Cologne, there's a lot of reliance as well on the service of the healthcare organizations and providers, which contribute as well to the economy. As we mentioned earlier, there's a decline in birth rate, and of course, the population is aging, which is something that puts a lot more pressure to this healthcare sector. And we also see that Germany is a technological leader when it comes to digitalization and moving towards a more digital economy. And it's also very important that the legal aspect not only legislates towards this digitalization, but it also wants to ensure their privacy and continues to highly regulate this healthcare sector. And when it comes to environmental aspects, the healthcare industry also wants to push to continue to reduce the carbon footprint and the carbon emissions of the industry overall. Next, to look at a deeper look into our competitors, we really wanted to make sure to highly understand, even though that the solution does not have any direct competitors, to understand what the competitive environment looks like for Malaconnect. So we analyzed the threat of new entrants, bargaining power of suppliers, the threat of substitutes, bargaining power of buyers, and the overall intensity of the competition in the sector. It is actually very incredible for us to see that everything seems low to moderate, including the switching costs are quite low for the healthcare suppliers that would be joining the platform. The threats of substitute, even though there are different alternatives for people to get healthcare, as we said earlier, they do not offer the same solution, which is having real-time capacities, which is the very unique aspect of the Malaconnect solution. When it comes to the power of buyers, there is really no cost from clients to join us. They really just pay for what they get from the B2B side and from the B2C side. And the threat of new entrants is actually the part that's the highest one. This is because the capital requirement to make Malaconnect is actually not that high. So somebody else could come up with a similar solution in a way and try to do it. However, we're doing the Malaconnect is doing a good job on keeping ahead of this, and the overall intensity of competition is quite low because the market saturation of people offering a similar solution is actually not high at all. There's similar kind of competitors, but nobody offers the same thing. So that's why we don't have any direct competitors. And the differentiation of our platform needs to continue to remain high. This is because the real-time capacities is what makes us different. So that's Malaconnect, Porter's 5 forces. And then when it comes to the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and of course the Taos analysis, we really wanted to highlight the competitive advantage that Malaconnect has. And this is really that mixing our strengths and opportunities is that we have the capacity to differentiate and of course to continue to innovate. What's going to be very important here is that we develop strategic partnerships with key partners, which we'll talk about that later on. And of course, in terms of exploitation strategy, mixing our weaknesses and opportunities. The highest weakness for the startup right now is that we have financial constraints. That's because it's a startup, of course, and that we will have to have a high level of manpower involvement. However, the big opportunity here is that those two things that are weaknesses can be very easily fixed over time. So we want to make sure through our implementation of our solution, then we exploit that strategy. And then when we mix our strengths and our threats for our leverage strategy, we really want to make sure that we monitor our solutions and that we make sure that we actually create value for the organization. And then weaknesses and threats, of course, this is our defensive strategy kind of mix. We have to make sure that we share costs with partners, and of course, that we focus in our core competencies across the board to make sure that we remain consistent.
All right. Now that we have a bigger or better understanding of the market environment that Malaconnect is in, let's dive a bit deeper into 1B, so the challenge itself. All right. So as Malaconnect is a marketplace, it needs service provider in order to add value for people in need. And on the other hand, the marketplace needs customers, so people looking for providers in order for providers to be relevant. This problem basically illustrates the so-called chicken-egg problem and comes down to our challenge. How can Malaconnect secure B2B healthcare partnerships ahead of its launch in Germany? In the next part, phase 1C, we will talk about the stakeholders and expected KPIs. All right, so in terms of stakeholders, we have service providers. Those function as a core component on the platform and are the ones that will offer their available capacities, so really necessary. As well as the key decision maker, who are the ones having access to the 3Ms. The service providers too are engaged along the phases of DAINA. Furthermore, important stakeholders to take into consideration along the phases of DIAN are the 7 just mentioned indirect, so to say, competitors. Those are, among others, as we just heard, traditional lead companies operating with a different business model, but they somehow try to solve a quite similar problem with that. Next to competition, do people in need here, namely customers, play a crucial role. These are the ones benefiting from the available provided capacities, therefore are engaged in the phase of DIAA. Then we have the supplier, which is also very important as it supplies Malaconnect with the necessary server to host the marketplace and thus create the aforementioned impact for Germany's society. As the German society benefits, so does the government has an interest in its functioning as well, which is why the government itself is a stakeholder too, mainly engaged for the phases of DIAN. Last but not least, local communities, which includes everyone supporting the use of this platform to ease their own process of finding support, as well as local councils and partnerships with hospitals or insurances that are positively impacted in their internal processes by the intermediary solution, are to be engaged along the phases of DIANA. KPIs. Before moving on to the second phase, the expected KPIs for this project and thus Malaconnect's post-launch strategies are to be mentioned because they are of utmost importance, of course. Here we have 5 key KPIs across the time span of the project's 12 weeks. Starting off with a clear challenge definition, which aligns with the KDM's feedback to be 100%. This KPI was started and completed within the first 2 weeks and also therefore laid the foundation, of course, for the rest of the project, which was yet to come. The second KPI contains to identify and define 3 provider categories for the initial launch and pilot phase of the entire platform Malaconnect. This KPI was initialized in week 1 and completed in week 3, resulting in 3 provider categories being nursing care services, everyday companionship, and 24 hours nursing care services. Based on these provider categories, we then were able to create action plans and identify potential provider partnerships for Malaconnect. This basically also leads us to the next KPI, so the creation of to-do recipes for our 4 final ideas in order to tackle our aforementioned challenge and secure B2B partners for Malaconnect's platform. As can be seen, the prototypes were to be completed in week 8. Based on the 3 provider categories and having the to-do recipes ready at hand, the team was working until week 10 to identify approximately 200 to 250 potential providers for partnerships, so providers joining the platform basically. Lastly, it was of utmost importance that both KDMs are always completed satisfied with the progress and the presented solutions, of course, which therefore means that we we're aiming to a satisfaction score of 5 out of 5. Because this concerns the entire project, of course, the initialization is in week 1 and the completion at the end of the project, so to say, in week 12.
Thank you, Malo. Now that we finalized phase 1, where we looked at the challenge, now, of course, it is up to us to actually look at how can we tackle this problem. And Malo and Maria already mentioned that, of course, in the end, we have to come up with ideas to help our B2B partnership strategy. So now we're looking at increasing both ideas and also looking at criteria where we can then solve our problem. And in the end, it is which methods can we use in order to purify our concepts in order to create the value. So if we first look at the ideas, phase 2A, here we can see that we looked at primary data and secondary data. And what is primary data? Well, in the primary data, we used a method called 635, which is implemented in the class. And why did we use this method? Well, basically, we all independently came up with different ideas, and then we handed these ideas over. So in the end, we got a diverse input. We both got the quantity because we all were implementing 3 ideas at one time, but also we got equal participation, which was unbiased because we all looked at different ideas independently. As you can see here, we created 12 primary data ideas where we leveraged our knowledge of the market and also, of course, had the help of the KDM. So here we looked at the creation of a value proposition. We looked at having meetings with contacts and potential partners in order to explain the problem, but then also the time of the reporting of the capacity method. We also looked at creating partnerships with healthcare associations in Cologne, because that's going to be the first launch market. We looked into creating a healthcare newsletter because, of course, that makes sense to keep all leads active, but that also plays into key account management. In terms of the next ideas, we looked at cold calling. We looked at creating a webinar, basically trying to create as much information as possible in order to make the problem as clear as possible. We looked at healthcare insurances or health insurances in the German market because they have much market knowledge, and also they have a lot of different contacts and information about other lead companies. And as you can see here, in terms of our primary data and our 12 primary ideas, it is super important that we have our views, but it is also imperative that we look at other ideas that we might not come up with, and that's why we looked at secondary data. Secondary data is the input of AI specifically, as it was required in the class, looking at providers such as ChatGPT or Google Gemini in order to just broaden our horizon and look at different ideas that could help us tackle the challenge of how to acquire partners for the B2B aspects of the Malaconnect platform. So first of all, looking at the ideas here, we gathered 8 ideas because some ideas also were exactly the same as the primary data, so hence we did not have to implement those. But here, what AI suggested is that we really need to emphasize data protection in our marketing strategy, as this is also a crucial aspect in Germany, as also Maria talked about in our context of the German healthcare market. It really makes sense to present an MVP, a minimum viable product, to potential providers, as this just makes it much more easy to understand what they will be able to do on the platform. Then it's the third idea was about creating partnership incentives, and that plays into idea 7 as well, using referrals. So just making the platform as convenient and also in terms of economic value as adequate as possible for our potential partners. So now looking at the secondary data, all in all, after gathering all relevant ideas, we also said, hey, as the value creation wheel presents, we need to create filters that are established in order to see if those ideas make sense or not. And that's how we move to the filters or the criteria, phase 2B. And phase 2B, again, implemented primary data and secondary data. In primary data, we looked at what criteria do ideas need to fulfill. Here we looked at, first of all, right away, also as we will talk about in phase 5, sorry, at the 3 M's. So the money. So are the ideas in the budget constraints? Because we're talking about a startup, we have to be very considerate in terms of budget. Criteria 3 plays into a similar role, so manpower, one of the other M's. Do we have the manpower to actually do this? Because we don't really want a big team working on something, because that's just going to be super expensive. And then, as you can see, criteria 1 and 3 play into each other. We looked at, is the implementation of the ideas applicable? Is it efficient? Do we legally comply with all the laws and regulatory requirements in Cologne and the German healthcare market? Then we looked at the availability and willingness of practitioners. We looked at a very important criteria which came up in our discussions, is about reach. How do we efficiently reach as many potential customers and partners as possible? And that also, of course, plays hand in hand with criteria 12. Does it actually include the right target group? As this will be a very localized market in the very beginning, we need to make sure that our ideas in the very end tackle the right target group. And then, of course, we talked about approachability and relevancy as well. And now that we looked at personal criteria that we came up with, our secondary data and secondary criteria with the help of AI was implemented. And here we can see why this secondary input is so valuable, because there were some filters that we really didn't think of right away, which are super important to our project. So in terms of scalability, that of course plays into the reach that we talked about, but how scalable is this idea? Also keeping in mind that we don't want to build up a big team right away, and we need to be cost efficient. Does our idea in the very end and our strategy in the very end align with the mission and values of Malaconnect, which is super important. Also, the relationship potential, which also then plays into the account management aspect. So how can we actually, through these ideas, manage our partners later on? And how adaptable are we in terms of the strategy? Then lastly, looking at different criteria of AI, it was about how risky is the partnership? How risky is the idea that we're trying to implement in terms of image, but also that plays into criteria 11, a clear exit strategy. Do we have a clear exit in terms of money, in terms of manpower, in order to be able to adapt to those different needs of the company? So now that we looked at both the criteria and the ideas and we collected them together, it was about how do we actually make sure that we move from our idea pool to the final ideas that we need to implement. And that's, first of all, how we came up to the POKER method. And that is talking about phase 2C, the purification of concepts. Quickly talking about the POKER method, well, first of all, looking at the purification of the concepts, of course, we had to distinguish the ideas a bit in order to structure them better. We looked at clustering them into marketing and promotion, into partnership development, into sales and revenue generation, and network and strategic partnerships. For marketing and promotion, we basically just clustered all the ideas that we mentioned into those different categories. So, for example, the creation of the value proposition and promotion emails plays into marketing. In terms of partnership development, it's about the contact and the interaction with the potential partners. So meetings, it's about going to the different healthcare providers, but also bigger institutions such as hospitals and other healthcare related institutions that are interested and also have a greater benefit by the Malaconnect platform. Now it's about sales and revenue generation, is how can we make the money from the partnerships and the B2B aspects. And lastly, network and strategic partnerships. is more about, as we talked about, for example, a database, creating a database of every partner possible in order to create a broad network, and then also make sure that we use the network benefits in order to fully benefit from the work that has been put into this project. And the collected ideas that we now clustered lastly lack a structural framework for selection, and that's what I mentioned previously, the poker method. That's what we selected for. So here you can see an overview of the poker method. It contains 4 main concepts. So basically it's about kill, so no further use of the filter whatsoever. We decided to not implement it, or we review some filters and criteria, and we have to maybe rename it or make it more feasible for the business, and also for it to be later evaluated. In terms of keeping, so basically we just keep the filter as it is because it's feasible and it's good for the business, and it makes sense to implement this for all the ideas that we have. And lastly, multiply. A filter is very much feasible and applicable, but it actually has multiple aspects to it, and that's why we might actually come up with multiple filters from one initial criteria. And that's how we came up with the purification of the concepts. And after establishing the concept of the poker method, here you can see the application of it. In the end, we decided to kill 5 ideas, which I'm going to go over now. We reviewed 6 filters. We kept 11 of them, and we multiplied 2. So what did we kill? We killed the availability and willingness of the practitioners. We also said that the distance minimizing filter is not mandatory to us. In terms of reviewing, as you can see, we mostly just redefined the criteria in order to have it more measurable and more feasible to Malaconnect. And here you can see, for example, we said that reach should just be redefined to something where we have a minimum threshold of potential suppliers that can be reached. Or in terms of relevancy, we just wanted to make it a bit more distinct. So we said relevancy for the German healthcare market. In terms of relationship potential, we redefine it to CRM, customer relationship potential, and data security we talked about because it needs to be feasible to our ideas and the filters. We said, okay, one idea must have a secure channel where it goes through. And lastly, for example, for partner feedback, we actually multiplied this. So we said, does this method allow for feedback, and was this method a part of an already given feedback? Coming to the next ideas and criteria, we see that for the market impact potential, we killed it. The long-term viability and cultural fit, we killed it because we said this is basically a must-have anyways, and this doesn't have to be a filter itself. And the complementarity aspect and the value aspect is similar in terms of bureaucracy, which we thought of because in the German market there's a lot of bureaucracy going on. We just redefine it to say how easy is an implementation of this idea. In terms of what we did keep, budget constraint, manpower, and legal compliance, as we said, those are really important filters. And lastly, the approachability, we multiplied to how effective are the providers to be approached and how approachable is this method internally for us, which of course also plays into manpower, budget, and legal compliance as well. And lastly, looking at the last criteria that we have, you just see an overview of what filters we believe are super important for our project, and that's why we just straight up kept them. So it's the target group, the time efficiency, the scalability, measurability, which was a secondary filter, the adaptability, the risk exit strategy, and the alignment with emission and values. So after considered brainstorming, selection, and purification of the filters, phase 3 is the next step towards our final B2B solutions.
Thank you so much, Jason. So as we go ahead with phase 3, we'll start with 3A, which is selecting the ideas. So after all of that poker method and bringing down the ideas, we revisit the challenge. So again, we wanted to make sure that we're still aligned with what our KDM needed. So we're still talking about securing B2B partnerships ahead of its launch. Then we clustered the ideas. So we had the 4 categories previously mentioned, so marketing and promotion, partnership development, sales and revenue generation, and then the network and strategic partnership. What we really wanted to focus here is that we want to validate the value of the ideas and the criteria. So there was a lot of conversations with our KDM, and this is where they also added other ideas. So for example, they mentioned some points that we had not thought about yet, such as data protection. So we are talking a lot about marketing and the marketing strategy that Malaconnect could have, but what does this look in terms of emphasizing that your information when you're on the platform will be protected? Because at the end of the day, we're also talking about healthcare related things. So it's sort of a concern in the market. The KDM also with their expertise told us that maybe it would be good to showcase success stories. So use a partner company, LamaCare, to show success stories of Malaconnect. So sort of have an advantage there and connect some ideas. And this is sort of where we moved ahead to the next step, where we included those ideas from the KDM. So we keep the clusters previously mentioned, but just through conversations and multiple meetings with our KDM, we combined our thoughts, and then we have those 4 cluster ideas. Some examples here is identifying strategic partnerships. So for example, maybe a database of potential partners, or seeing what could be an incentive to attract a partner. So maybe a lower price, having a discount or a referral. And again, since we're talking about B2B strategies, maybe developing a workflow plan. So what would the reach out look like? What would the exit strategy would look like? So sort of putting all of those thoughts together. As we move ahead, we validated some value from the ideas, but we also need to see the criteria. So for the next criteria, we have again the team proposed and then the KDM proposed. They are pretty similar because we work so well hand to hand. But for example, the KDM also added some important factors such as scalability, measurability, also the CRM potential, and all of these proposed criteria came together to the next step, which is where we weight our criteria. So if we move ahead for 3C is where we're moving is where we're putting a little bit more of value into our ideas and criteria, and we're going to rank them. So as you can see here, we discussed through different methods on what would be the most important things for the KDM in terms of filters and ideas. So we kept budget, manpower, legal compliance, measurability, exit strategy, mission and values, and risk. So as Jason had mentioned before too, you can already see that within this criteria, there's a lot of relation to the minute, manpower, and money. So we're already sort of integrating a lot of the VCW concepts in our criteria, but also the legal compliance, given already the bureaucracy that we can maybe find in Germany, but also because we're a startup, making sure that we have something that can be measurable and monitor the impact that we can have, but also this information can later be used for further sales. And because again, we're a startup, we move ahead with, before we move ahead, we go with the risk. So we want to understand what is the risk of having a partnership. So we're just jumping in and having some partnerships, but it's maybe important to keep in mind that we need to consider what that risk may look like whenever we're reaching out to partners. Now we'll jump ahead to the criteria that is optional. So instead of the other one, the mandatory criteria, it's weighed and it's organized by priority. But then when we're talking about the optional criteria, we decided to do, we weighted it. So reach, scalability, and ease of implementation are the ones with the highest. So as you can see, they have up to 80% between them. Then you also have the efficiency. Again, we have to address the situation that we are a startup. And so we need to make sure that the ideas that we pick are going to be effective, but won't take as much time or manpower. So that's something that we kept into mind. Also, the adaptability of them. Can we transfer them across the platform as we develop them? And finally, our relevancy for the German health market. So again, this is the sector that we're trying to target. So it's a good criteria that we had as optional. As we validate our ideas, we jump into capturing value. And in this section, we are going to touch point on a couple of items from the VCW. The first one is the value creation funnel. So we've talked a lot about our ideas, our criteria, but in this section is really where we sort of bring it down. So we had required filters that were applied, and we started with 19 ideas. So the ones that you see right there are the ones that we've been discussing, and through conversations they went through the funnel. This is pretty much, we gave importance of yes or no to those ideas through those filters. And from that, 17 ideas came out. Because we had so much contact with our KDM, you can see that the 17 ideas went ahead to the multi-criteria decision analysis. But in this case, we use the optional filters. So for the optional filters, as you can see in this screenshot, we put weight to them that we had seen previously, and we started ranking them. So in this case, we were able to select the ones that went through required and optional filters. And we were very happy to share that we had 4 principal ideas that sort of made the cut from our analysis. And they were sort of similar, which we're very happy to see because it all relates in terms to the outbound marketing strategies. So our main ideas were cold calling and cold emailing, then also attending conferences and seminars of the industry, and the last idea being enhancing the search engine visibility and also boosting our social media marketing. So as you can see, there's going to be different channels that we have to use for this, but overall, we're talking about marketing strategies. So for cold calling and emailing, we're talking about a database. For the conferences, is more of a research in terms of where to go, what's the most useful for Malaconnect. And then the last one, in terms of being social media, we're prioritizing Google and LinkedIn. So as we go ahead to 4B, I will pass it along to my colleague Jason that will explain you a little bit further.
Thank you, Camilla. So now that we walked through the value creation funnel, it is about the concepts and the value proposition. So now that we look at this, we decided to implement the Blue Ocean strategy, and exactly this will demonstrate why Malaconnect is such an innovation and why it is so feasible for the VCW, the Value and Innovation Value Creation Wheel. So firstly, looking at the Blue Ocean strategy. So what are we trying to show our potential customers here, but also on both sides? So as Marlo explained in the very beginning, the B2B side and the B2C side. So this basically encompasses everything, and it's about creating the competitive advantage and exactly showing visually why Malaconnect will be a success in the market, because it focuses on the value innovation. It shows that by identifying this blue ocean, we actually reduce risk, which coincides with one of the criteria that we have, and also emphasizes that this will be a customer-centric approach. But here we even can evaluate this as it will be customer-centric for the B2C, but it will also help every provider on this platform, which makes it a complete blue ocean. So looking at the industry criteria, we look at the quality of leads that are available to the providers. It's about access to real-time capacities for the customers. It's about the user friendliness for the customers. It's about the cost efficiency for the providers again, so the B2B side. Looking at transparency and information availability, that is super important for all the customers, because this is basically why this problem exists and why it starts. And in terms of personalization and matching quality, of course, you want this to be as high as possible, although it is quite hard to achieve. In terms of data security and privacy, every channel that really wants a competitive advantage in a market needs to implement this, especially in the German healthcare market. In terms of customer service and the range of offerings, those are the last 2 industry criteria that we identified as crucial for every business and company that wants to be in this market. And now looking at Malaconnect specifically, compared to traditional lead companies and search engines such as Google, we see that the quality of leads, the access to real-time capacities, and the user friendliness stand out immediately. Why is that? Well, because the B2C side, the customers come to the platform and they see the leads, actually the B2B side. So the B2B side knows what customers they have, they know what problems the customers have, and they know exactly what they're looking for. In terms of, for the B2C side, the customers have immediately real-time access to the capacities of the providers, which matches them all together in one platform with ease. If you compare this to traditional leads and search engines, it's not even comparable, because search engines are not, they don't have the real-time capacities. They don't have the qualities for the providers, the quality of leads for the providers either. So really here you can see the foundation of the blue ocean for Malaconnect. If you look at the transparency information availability, this is the last aspect that we see as a clear difference compared to the competition, or if you want to phrase it as the competition, but I'm going to go to that later on. It's actually that Malaconnect, through the business model and through having both the benefits for the providers and the customers, there's much more transparency and information availability for both sides compared to traditional lead companies that have to call. There are a lot of different barriers for the real-time capacities to be really known. And also for search engines, it actually costs a lot for businesses to be present on the search engines, to be readily available, and also have the information availability for their capacities. So here you can see the foundation of the blue ocean. And what does this lead us to believe and to go to the KDMs with? It's that we conclude that Malaconnect doesn't have specific competitors in the market. And that's why it's so unique. It's because the business model and the platform itself implement the key aspects of a blue ocean strategy to mitigate risk while enhancing the competitive advantage. And that is super important. And now coming to the next slide, we actually show what the platform reduces and what it enhances. So here you can see on the next slide, so that there are factors that should be eliminated, there are factors that should be reduced, and there are factors that should be uniquely created for customers and providers, and that should just be increased. And now looking at basically what we have discussed right there in the blue ocean, what factors should be eliminated? It's the high cost for the leads, it's the complexity of any usage, basically, if it's a search engine or a unique platform, and it's just unnecessary information that's not even updated. What should be reduced? It's generic content, and specifically, if you, a customer who is in need for a family member, the wait time. That is extremely important to reduce the wait time for customers, because in this industry itself, the problems tend to be urgent, and that's why the wait time for the feedback from service providers should be eliminated. Well, it can't be eliminated, and that's why we're trying to reduce it as much as possible. In terms of what we create, as I said, the foundation of this platform is we create the access to real-time capacities and availability of information. That also then plays hand in hand with personalized advice and support for any customer that is on the platform. Or if we look at our problem for the VCW, for the providers, if there's a B2B provider that has problems in the market or problems with capacities, the platform will provide support and updated support that also will lead to less customers being left on a wait, because they then know there is a shortage of capacities for one provider and they will go to the next one. If we look at lastly the factors that should be increased, the transparency and the information content that I mentioned earlier, and the user friendliness and accessibility to the platform. For the users and the user experience for Malaconnect, it will be, you go on the platform, you say what is your needs, and you say when do you need it, and you will be able to find exactly what you're searching for. And that is exactly what our value proposition combines. And these last two slides should really show the value created and the blue ocean it taps into of Malaconnect, and the potential it has in the German healthcare market, and of course locally in Cologne, first of all.
Thank you so much, Jason. As we finish wrapping up the value proposition, we jumped into Force C, which is the prototype. So as Jason mentioned, the value proposition that came from the value creation funnel and all of the process from the VCW, we came up with 3 different prototypes. The first one being the platform itself of Malaconnect. So as you can see by the screenshot that we have shared, is sort of what it would look like whenever you have a provider. It would have a certain rating in terms of the capacity, and it would inform you how much capacity that current provider has, again in real time, which is really what differentiates us. Then we also generated a database. So currently this is a bit of a representation of the biggest healthcare related conferences that will be happening in Germany. As one of our ideas was attending more conferences to get more visibility out for Malaconnect, this would be one of the points that they should look forward to. We were also very lucky because our KDM within discussions was able to, after the value creation funnel, secure participating in a conference already in Germany and sort of putting this idea into action. Then we also moved on to generating some templates. So there's a cold email template and a cold calling template. And what we wanted to do through this is having a structure, but also making sure that we highlight the value proposition that the VCW generated for Malaconnect. And of course, make it adjustable depending on the type of client. So we were very happy. These were all of our 3 sort of prototypes that we had that came out of the VCW, just to wrap up this section.
Exactly. Now looking at phase 5, it's about consolidating the value that we have mentioned throughout the VCW, and phase 5A, which is about the 3Ms and the business model. So if we look at the 3Ms, first of all, and the ideas that we came up with throughout the value creation funnel, it's about cold calling, the cold emails, attending the conferences and seminars, and online advertisements. As you can see, we clustered cold calling and cold emails together, as we believe they will require the same amount of manpower, minute, and money. On the left, you see an overview of what we believe this will entitle to. In terms of the cold calling and cold email, we believe that the manpower and money should be low, as we believe a single salesman can begin by contacting the different providers and start building up the customer base on the B2B side. In terms of the minute, of course, this will be medium to high, because it takes time for this single person in order to come up with the channel providers, then contacting them, and then also keeping them updated throughout the process in order to get them on the platform. In terms of attending the conferences and the seminars, the manpower is low to medium, as we don't need many people attending the conferences. The minute will be low to medium because the conferences are on selected days and weeks in the year. So the strategic focus will really be only on these days at the conferences and attending those conferences. But beforehand, it only needs to be prepared what actually is the goal of these conferences. But the money will be medium to high, as the tickets and entry into these conferences can be quite significant in terms of money, in terms of cost. And that's why we will also try to leverage industry partnerships in order to reduce the prices, or even try to enter these conferences for free. But as of right now, we cannot guarantee that this will be the case, and hence it will be medium to high. And lastly, online advertisements such as LinkedIn, Instagram, SEA, which is on Google, right? It will be medium in terms of manpower, because a single DSP advertising manager is sufficient, yet there's a lot of adaptability required. So in terms of how do the cost per clicks evolve, how does the success and the conversion evolve on the different channels, and this will be highly monitored and then also adapted. In terms of minutes, of course, that will then be high, because everything I just talked about. And in terms of money, online advertisement, while they range in costs, and we cannot guarantee one specific cost for any kind of campaign, it will be medium to high, because it requires a constant presence on these platforms to really make a difference in terms of advertising success. And coming to the next slide, we see that Malaconnect bridges the needs of the B2B and B2C customers. As we have talked throughout, the B2B aspect is the aspect that our challenge and our funnel talked about, but of course the entire business model and the business model canvas, which is about consolidating the value, shows that really B2B and B2C go hand in hand, and B2C would also be a different project using the VCW again, and trying to see how we can optimize the B2C strategy. But in terms of the key partners, as I mentioned, it makes sense for Malaconnect to connect to hospitals, conference providers, publishers, and health insurances. And why is that? Because you get visibility in the industry, you get information from the industry players, and you get positive reference from your partners to potential providers on the B2B side. In terms of activities, it's about IT and maintenance, and most importantly, for the B2B side, the sales and the key account management. That goes hand in hand with the key resources. It's the IT team, which consists of a front-end developer and 2 back-end architects, and also a sales and management team that will try to get the providers on board. In terms of the value proposition, it's for B2C, it's the access to the care service in real time, as we talked about in the blue ocean, and also for the B2B, it's about gaining reach, gaining new clients without much effort. Customer relationships, of course, as we said throughout, account management will be crucial for the B2C side. In order to really dive into this, again, a separate VCW would be required. And for the customer segments, so who are targeted for the B2C side, it's about the people in need and the family members. And for the B2B side, it's about healthcare providers, healthcare organizations, and healthcare insurances that then would be able to provide us with new healthcare providers. And the revenue streams for B2B are pay-per-lead, premium partnerships, and sponsored visibility. So sponsored advertising on the platform, and the cost structure is the platform development with the IT team, the platform maintenance with the IT team. And as we talked about in this entire VCW, it's about the B2B client acquisition, first and foremost, next to the account management in the long term.
Thank you very much, Jason. So next in phase 5 is the test and KPIs evaluation. So a very important part of consolidating value is actually coming back to the initialized KPIs and therefore show how they were measured, what is the level of importance, and if they are rather short-term or long-term. Starting off with the challenge definition, we had, as we mentioned already in the beginning, very close communication through the KDMs. So we made sure that the solutions are aligned with what the KDMs were envisioning. And we also made use of iterating through a lot of feedback loops, therefore. As a challenge lays the foundation, the project's foundation, so to say, the importance was very high, of course, but rather medium to long term. The identification of 3 key provider categories was very easy to measure, as it's just 3 provider categories that we have to come up with and that we have to agree on. But of course, it's very important, as this was the base for our suggested solution to do recipes, so to say, that we were touching upon and that we already showed. Of course, therefore, this is also very long term. Identifying 3 types of organizational partners yields a very long-term relationship, of course, with very high importance, as Jason just touched upon. And then we have the creation of a partner action plan, or the plural, so partner action plans. It was measured by creating these templates, these scripts, and identifying the crucial conferences that Malaconnect and the KDMs have to attend. These recipes are, of course, very important as they will be used for the initial reach out. So it's really a make it or break it, a sink or swim moment with these recipes that we created. And lastly, the KDM satisfaction was measured constantly throughout the project, of course, but ultimately with a discussion at the end of the project. And as the KDM has the power over the 3 M's that we were talking about the entire presentation already, this KPI is also very important. The next phase of phase 5 is phase 5C, so implementation and control. Basically, we have identified 4 milestones to achieve our desired results. Being the first one is the implementation of marketing efforts pre-platform launch, so before Malaconnect actually goes live. Here, while we are still in the development of the platform, the KDM and also the rest of the team, they have to showcase the advances, the development progress, so basically illustrate more and more what the platform is about and basically showcasing the advantages. We believe that the KDM will be able to reach more visibility and also like a very lower cost on his own personal profile than rather company profile, because this basically adds also a bit personal to it and may lock in some more providers. The second milestone is the finally launch of cold call, the cold email efforts, and then of course make iteration through feedback loops to basically adjust if necessary. So as we already mentioned a lot of times, Malaconnect is a startup with very limited capital. So we try to stay low cost here. And these outbound marketing strategies, so for example, making use of cold calls, cold emails, should therefore be prioritized. We also already touched upon this, but we forecast that a single salesperson would be enough to start due to the fact that the pilot phase of Malaconnect will be in only one city, so Cologne in Germany. And therefore, we assume that one salesperson can properly connect with around about 3 partners per workday. So by reaching these 200 to 250 prospects, we assume it will take maximum of 3 months for the Cologne area. The third milestone is then constant content creation via the KDM and also the team, of course, which goes hand in hand with advertisement as well. So in order to be sustainable, visible, we at a low cost as possible, we suggest that Malaconnect makes use of SEO, so search engine optimization efforts to just reduce advertisement costs. Therefore, the KDM plus the team should post content at least twice a week on LinkedIn, which basically also then increases the traffic on the platform and also basically then increases the SEO ranking itself. This effort should remain active before, during, and after the launch of the platform. So this is really continuously. And upon budget availability, Malaconnect, of course, can also pay for advertisements. So this would be SEA that Jason touched upon to boost B2B partnerships and B2C visibility, especially in the beginning, because search engine optimization, of course, needs some time in order to function. It's not overnight. It's really like creating a lot of content that Google has to identify as very important and helpful for clients, for whoever's going to read it. So therefore, it's a long-term game, basically. The fourth milestone is the already touched upon attendance at a conference and other networking events. So herefore, we basically try to make sure that Malaconnect can also reach out to people that are already interested in the sector itself in person. So not only online via social media, SEO, or via the phone or email, but really face-to-face and in person. On this slide, we can basically see, so to say, a roadmap laid out, basically a step-to-step process of what should be happening within the next 3 months. Starting off with the attendance of CARE conference in Essen. As we already touched upon, quite luckily, we were able to, or the KDM basically of Malaconnect was able to attend the conference in Essen. We figured out that this might be very important within the first 2 weeks. Therefore, you can see the initial and progress phase, and then the CARE conference in Essen took place in between week 10 and 11. So therefore, that was very luckily, but very nice that we could implement this right away and see the effects, basically. The control measure, of course, here is to receive feedback from our KDM. The next step is then leverage the LinkedIn network. As I said already, 2 posts per week. This should start within week 1 already. And then basically, as we said, this is constant as it's also about search engine optimization. It's generating traffic and visibility should basically be through the entire time span that's even possible. So how can we control the measure? We measure visibility. We can measure likes, comments, profile visits, actually even traffic on the platform itself once it's ready. Then cold call, cold email, these efforts. So 3 per workday is very conservative also. It can be even more. And this, of course, is very important. It's crucial in order to solve the touched upon chicken egg problem in the beginning. Therefore, this is very similar to leveraging social media from the beginning to the very end in order to be able to gain providers for the platform and therefore add value for basically these people in need who then can see the real-time capacities. How do we control, or what is our control measure here? Of course, as we assume 3 per working day, so outreaches, so to say, we can pretty clear in numbers, quantitatively measure how many reach outs basically took place in the end of this 3 months. Then we have the content creation by the KDMN team for SEO, which is basically just in addition to that I was talking about with the leverage of LinkedIn. So how do we measure this? We measure by just SEO visibility, as I just already touched upon, traffic on the platform, interactions with our platform itself, and also, of course, very importantly here, the usage. So the more Malaconnect will be visible, given that we have providers already on there, right, illustrating the capacities, we can measure it really good by showing how much or how many people use it. And in terms of SEO specifically, or in particular, you can of course also get analysis of where is Malaconnect ranked right now compared to the previous month, compared to potential competitors, and so on and so forth. Last but not least, the continuous monitoring of performance. Of course, Jason touched upon this with our limited marketing budget and resources. Of course, due to the fact that Malaconnect is a very young startup, we have to figure out along the way, of course, what works best. Should we focus more maybe on leverage the LinkedIn and post more frequently, or should we maybe move this capacity more to content creation? And in terms of SEO, maybe it makes most sense, especially in the beginning, to move even more of our resources to the outreach, so cold call, cold email. This is basically also continuously from week 1 until week 12. So it's a monitoring of the performance and basically adapting accordingly. Then what are basically our project outputs that we expect to reach with the entire information and strategies that we were talking about for the last hour? We want to raise awareness, which is the first one. Of course, having a search engine optimization, because this basically ultimately leads to more traffic. Jason touched upon it. In this industry, most of the time, these topics are very urgent, so people don't start taking care about potential, like finding a potential nursing care before it's too late, so to say. So therefore, I just want to emphasize this again, why search engine optimization is very crucial. The next best thing people do, if they do not know where to find something, they just Google. So Malaconnect really has to be very visible on Google in this case. We, of course, want to reach the milestone of having 200 potential partners reached out to, in the best case already, of course, gained for the platform, and of course, do the conference participation to have these face-to-face interactions. Having the project outputs mentioned, what are now the managerial implications? Of course, there's the importance of internal involvement. So the internal stakeholders have to raise awareness to basically understand why SEO, for example, in this particular sense or case is of such importance. I just touched upon it. And then basically, of course, make usage of these internal milestones, right? In order to track, basically implement a track record and figuring out what works, what does not work. Then, of course, next to raising only awareness and following the internal milestones, of course, internally, they have to monitor the efforts. So implement monitoring and control systems in order to basically be able to evaluate the effectiveness. Then we have organizational change over time. As Malaconnect, we said it, and I will say it over and over. It's a very young startup by now, with Cologne being the MVP or pilot phase, but with expansion, for example, or with making sure basically that we can reach, or Malaconnect can reach out to even more providers and can make more efforts in order to help Germany's society. In this case, more staff will be needed, which can be, for example, account managers, sales and marketing, and so on and so forth. which also goes hand in hand with then potential future capital requirement. I just said it, as Malaconnect expands then to other German regions, capital may be needed in order to fund these processes.
Perfect. So perfect. So thank you for all this whole explanation, Camila, Jason, and Marlo. Just to finally conclude with our project, we wanted to do a quick mention of the statements that we received from the key decision maker. We were incredibly lucky to be able to work so closely with the KDM and to have spent so much time together. So I will take the time to actually read the testimony that we received from the KDM. The application of the innovation and value creation wheel over the last 12 weeks significantly enhanced our strategic approach. I highly recommend the framework for its clear, actionable insights. We're excited to implement our new strategies and see where they lead us. Thank you to the great team as well. So to give you some information, we actually had 32 meetings with the key decision maker. We also had across 465 interactions via our internal communications channel, and the key decision maker used 80 hours of their time on this project, and it gave us a 5 out of 5 in their satisfaction in our last meeting, according to the key decision maker. So this goes to show that the value creation wheel definitely added value to the organization, and that the KDM resonates with this. Finally, we wanted to link our conclusion to the learned lessons that we had from this project, specifically to the project related. We realized that the involvement of the key decision maker is incredibly important in order to identify the challenge of the organization, the scope of the challenge, and of course to make sure that everything that we propose in terms of solutions and of criteria and everything that we did really adds value and that it's applicable to the organization that we're trying to help here. More specifically to the team dynamic, we realized that the value creation wheel really allows room for every single person in the team to add ideas, to give feedback, and it allows for room for discussion very easily. So it's very important that the team dynamic is positive and that the communication and feedback is constant across the different phases. So this is very important for the success of this project. And of course, course specific, we really wanted to highlight that the value creation wheel can be applied in different contexts, in different scenarios, including our personal lives, and the applicability of the model can be reutilized very easily to facilitate brainstorm sessions or even just make your decision making a lot easier. We really wanted to use this time also to thank Professor Luis Felipe Lages and Carlos Reyes Marquez for the guidance and the involvement that we received from them across the whole semester, because without them we wouldn't be able to make this project possible. And then finally, we just wanted to highlight quickly the poster that we created for the class, doing a very nice summary of everything that we discussed during the past hour. So yeah, you can take a look at it, and we just wanted to thank you for myself and the whole team for your attention, and to thank Malaconnect as well for this opportunity. So thank you so much for your time.